Welcome to Psychology Today. I'm your host, Ann Morrow. This is a show about bicycling in general and specifically about bicycle safety. And thank you for joining us. I want to thank our behind-the-scenes crew who is working hard in the control room right now to make this show possible. And of course, thank you to Northwest Bicycle Safety Council that produces the show. Here at Northwest Bicycle Safety Council, we're kind of winding down our fiscal year right now, this being November, and we've had a very successful 2014. And thank you to all of you for your support and your viewership and doing our Beaverton Banks and Beyond ride. Just recently, Portland Public Schools reached out to Northwest Bicycle Safety Council and told Bruce Buffington, our president, that they needed helmets for some special needs kids that ride a form of trikes. And so thanks to your support and generosity throughout the year, we were in a position that we had helmets on hand, and Bruce was able to deliver some helmets to Portland Public Schools for those kids. And we're grateful for that, for the ability to do that. And Bruce reported back that some of the school district's helmets were pitiful and unsafe. So we're glad that every little head there at Portland Public Schools, those special needs kids, could have good new helmets to protect their brains. So let's get on with our show. We have two guests joining us. I've got Brad Nelson here from Axiom Event Productions, and he's going to talk to us about some different bike related things. He did Cycle Oregon in 2014. I want to hear about that. And he also helps produce event rides, and we'll define what an event ride is, and we'll hear some of the particulars about organizing such an event. And our second guest is Bryan, Hance, who has developed a way to register your bicycle just in case it gets stolen. So we're going to talk about bike theft, how to maybe prevent your bike from getting stolen in the first place, and some things to do before and after it might get stolen to hopefully recover your bicycle. So let's get started, and let's meet Brad from Axiom Event Productions. Welcome, Brad.
Thank you, Ann, and thank you to the Northwest Bicycle Council for the invitation today.
Sure, great to have you. Why don't you begin by, I always like to learn a little bit about my guests and just a little background, so tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you. Let's see, I came to Portland about 9 years ago. I grew up in suburban Connecticut and moved to Portland, I think for the same reason that a lot of people do. Heard at the time, it was 2005, there was a lot of good buzz about the city. I was looking for a career change, and I was looking to live on the West Coast, and it seemed like it was a good fit. And since that time, Portland's been really good to me. It's given me the career I have now in event production, and certainly in cycling, as well as I didn't know how much I liked mountains and just the scenery and the availability of really a great place to live. And so I've called Portland my home now, and I'm really pleased to be here.
After 9 years, we'll let you do that. So what's your own cycling history, and how does a bicycle fit into your lifestyle?
Cycling is really both recreationally and very practically as a commuter really central to a lot of things in my daily life, not just because I think about cycling rides for my clients and how to have a great and fun day for thousands of people every year, but also because part of the reason why I live in a city is the availability to be a bicycle commuter and have that opportunity to get around in that way. And I think like a lot of people, when I was much younger in a suburban area, growing up in suburban Connecticut, the bicycle was my gateway to expand my world when as in my formative years. So that was important. That's what we did as kids. We rode around the neighborhood. As you got older, we were able to go farther and go farther and go farther. Now that I live here and I'm more into road riding, and that's really opened up new possibilities in this time for supported touring that I like to do, as well as just be in this area. We have so many great rides that are right at our fingertips and so easy to get to, whether a quick ride out into the gorge or
just around Portland.
Just around much of Portland, or just south of us into the Willamette Valley, and certainly to the west into the foothills of the coastal range. Just great riding, and it's really accessible and really easy.
Well, it sounds like you're the perfect person to have doing some of these event rides. You're very passionate about it. So how you commute by bike? You ride a bike a lot, just getting around. But do you do any special training or do anything to stay fit? Because you did Cycle Oregon, which we'll touch on, and that was not for the novice cyclist. So how do you stay fit?
In the winter, certainly my number of miles that I do is less, and the work that I have is very, very time consuming often, so getting out and doing several rides in a week can be challenging. And so in the winter, I'm always looking for that great couple hour weather. If the weather is really good, and I can leave my office at times, and I can take 2 hours and do a great ride. But in the winter, and certainly I try to do some more running and staying fit that way, and just trying to be as active as possible with other activities. Just getting out and about in Portland, I think, is fun enough. I like to walk places. I like my neighborhood. I choose to walk to a lot of places. The distance between my office, my apartment, my neighborhood, very, very walkable. So that's also an important aspect of living in a city, having bicycling be an important, quick way of getting around, as well as remaining active year-round.
Multimodal.
Exactly.
So, as I mentioned earlier, you rode at least some of the Cycle Oregon route this year. And a lot of people have Cycle Oregon on their bucket list. That's something that people always talk about in our area. And have you done a Cycle Oregon? So what do you think the appeal is about Cycle Oregon that lures cyclists?
I think putting a Cycle Oregon on someone's bucket list, I recommend it. Cycle Oregon is a unique experience for riders who want a very supported ride with having a lot of autonomy within that ride. And Cycle Oregon does a really nice job at providing both an excellent level of support and one's basic support throughout an entire week, and really gives the rider a lot of freedom to help craft and tailor their particular week. It is a week of cycling, and you have to be physically and somewhat mentally prepared for that, because it can be there are easy days and there are harder days, and there are days that are you're just tired. I mean, you're just tired.
Yeah.
But there are other days that you're just more than excited to get up, get on your bike, and ride all day.
Yeah.
And what's nice is some days that are longer, and some of the rides that are longer, you got to get up, you got to get out there at a good time, and you have to make it back to camp at the end of the day to make dinner. But other days that are shorter, that gives riders a real opportunity to be able to take your time on the road, be more, take in all the sights.
Yeah.
I mean, the scenery is gorgeous.
The little communities.
There's the little communities. There's a lot of historical markers and different things to see, and you can really take the time to spend extra time in a small community at a rest stop, or just pulling over and taking pictures and taking in some breathtaking views. I think that's what makes Cycle Oregon really a great model for a nice week. That you have the support and you have a lot of flexibility within that.
Yeah, those are good points. So what were the circumstances that got you to Cycle Oregon in 2014?
I'm really fortunate that I know the owner of Nasa Familia Coffee, and Augusto invited me to join his team. Nasa Familia runs the morning espresso bar at Cycle Oregon, and so as part of his team, we get up early, 4 a.m. early. We make coffee for the riders, and then we all get on our bikes and ride all day, which is, for me as an event producer, that's an especially fun and personally fun day. Also, Augusto is a good friend of mine, and so we have a little bit of a unique Cycle Oregon experience that we get to be a part of their coffee day, an important part of a lot of people's day.
Essential.
And and then we get to ride. And though we work, we don't get to ride every single day.
Sure.
We do get to ride most days of the Cycle Oregon week.
Yeah. So you got to experience a lot of it.
Oh, definitely.
And now I hear that this particular year was challenging. So was it? And if so, how was it challenging?
I heard that too, and I think most Cycle Oregons are challenging. It is a week of cycling, and I don't think that's easy. I don't think that's easy for anyone to do. This particular year, there were definitely some climbs that were long and grueling, but they came with great downhills and breathtaking views and scenery. And though I think people might have been grumbling a little bit in the week as they're kind of really getting their legs underneath them, everyone rides every day.
Yeah.
And no matter how hard you might have thought the day before was, you were stoked that you did it, you completed it. And there was another day of great riding following that.
And a good meal and a good night's rest, and
a
maybe
good
a
meal.
massage table, and you're good to go.
Definitely. Those type of amenities, they're good. They're really overall good food for an event that size. And they do bring in a lot of, Cycle Oregon does bring in a lot of something as local as they can get on many of their rides. So I've done it 4 years in a row now, and yeah, there were challenging days this year, but there's been challenging days every year.
So what advice would you give to someone that's maybe contemplating looking at 2015, got it on their list, maybe this is the year? What advice would you give a cyclist?
If this is your first Cycle Oregon, if you're gonna do that, if you haven't been riding a lot, miles in the saddle is number one. It just you being physically fit and mentally ready to be out riding for 6+ hours a day, even over multiple days, would be, just gives you a good base. Secondly, definitely, Cycle Oregon does a really good job of preparing you for their week. They do I've read every.
Oh, okay.
They have a handbook. I've read
Yeah.
every word in it, and they do a really nice job at providing some insider tips and expectations for the week, and a lot of things of what the Cycle Oregon experience is. Secondly, and I try to do this, is find a couple of other multi-day rides to do and get the feel for how you handle yourself when you can't just pop the bike back on your car, go home and take a shower.
Good advice.
So there's a lot of opportunity for that across the country, of course.
Sure.
To take a weekend to do a 2 or 3 day or 4-day ride prior to Cycle Oregon. But the other side of it is, if you're relatively fit, if you ride a fair amount, you can definitely do Cycle Oregon.
And my advice too would be, this isn't an issue for you. If you want to do Cycle Oregon in 2015, they usually give the route in February. So be ready. Start looking at your other options of what is coming down the pike, and be ready, because sometimes they fill up really fast. So you really need to jump on that registration and make your decision right away. So have that in mind too. And if it's really, really challenging and that's not for you, maybe this isn't your year. But
yeah, I think they'll be around.
There'll be another one. So let's talk about your business, which you're co-owner of Axiom Event Productions. What compelled you to create this business? So
co-owner of Axiom is Neil Armstrong, and he and I have been working together on a lot of our current events and some of the other events that are in our portfolio for a few years. And we decided that we wanted to continue providing really good service to these clients and these rides, and wanted to expand what we were doing and the services we were able to provide. And the best way to do that was to form this company, and we're entering our second year of business. I can happily say things are going very well. And we say great events start with great management, and that's where Neil and I really come together on our shared and different skill sets to take each piece of the event, each piece, retake it apart again, and really analyze what makes it a great day for the participant or the rider, what makes it a great day for the sponsors, what makes it a great day for the volunteers, what makes it a great day for the clients and what they're getting out of it and what their goals are, and then helping put that back together, producing that event, and really making it so that these events not only are successfully financially for our clients, but also that the riders or participants are having a great day.
Right. But you make it sound really simple. You just tear it apart and put it back together and voila. I'm sure it's not quite that simple. So I want to kind of double back, though. A question kind of arose. You're talking about Cycle Oregon, and I know somebody else that does events. So while you were on Cycle Oregon, are you analyzing everything and kind of like working it, kind of figuring out, oh, we should do that on this ride, or oh, that looks nice, or ooh, these snacks at the rest stop, that's a good idea. Are you doing that all day long?
Well, of course. I can't go to an event. It doesn't matter what type of event. I can't go to an event and not look at how the event is set up, or what people are serving, or what, because there's trends and what people are doing, and what does the customer want, and how are they communicating that, and how are they reacting to new things. And we certainly try new ideas and new food items, or what's working here.
So kind of a busman's holiday. Well, you were working it though anyway, but still.
It's not a bad metaphor. But it also, I like to go ride. I talk with riders all the time about what they want, what they're looking for from events, what makes it a good day for them, and all that feedback helps influence, and certainly my own experience helps. I think about myself. I'm riding down this road. I'm here at mile 60 on this road, and there's a 2-mile climb. What is the customer? What does the rider need? And what is and if I'm an elite rider and I'm just really, I ride every day, or I'm at this event and this event is my stretch. This event is my challenge to do this ride, to raise this money for the cause that I'm passionate about, and this is my challenge. What's it like to be at that point as a rider, and how do you support both of those throughout the event?
Nice, nice insight. So your events through your company include Reach the Beach, Bike MS, Ride to Defeat ALS, and the Harvest Century, and you're involved in Sunday Parkways, just to name a few. So tell us, you kind of touched on it, but just generally, what do you do? How do you make these things happen? What all is involved? Which maybe kind of briefly, just kind of sum it up, because we'd be here all night.
Sums it up. In some cases, and I won't speak too specifically about each event, but kind of this process is, okay, where are we going, and what do we want to see, and how far do we want to ride? So when it comes to many of these events, I've helped develop a lot of the routing. Some previous owners, or they, like in Reach the Beach, it's been the same route for 20 years. But what do we want to do? And then on top of that, we add, how are we going to support people, and what kind of amenities are we going to provide, and what are we doing within that event? And then that creates and then on top of that, we add the little things that make a rider's day, that are not as big, but like the little things, like, oh, we should do this little thing at this rest stop, or let's make sure that on this stretch of road we add a couple of extra signs of confidence, or something like that, or wow, this section needs a lot of safety help, and we should really just do a little bit more here to make sure that people are safe going through the section, that the road conditions are well communicated. So we do all those little things, and then it's in conjunction with our clients to bring together the cause and their messaging and all the other elements that they are bringing into the event, and help bring that seamlessly to the rider.
So Harvest Century is the most recent ride that you've worked on, and that was just in September. Let's kind of talk specifically about that. So who does Harvest Century raise money for? What's the background on that ride?
So Harvest Century is owned and benefits an organization called Community Vision. They provide a variety of services to people with disabilities, from housing assistance and job placement to in-home care, and a variety of other services. Really quite a fantastic organization. They've just celebrated their 25th year this past September. This year was the 12th annual Harvest Century, my 10th year working on the event, and I can also say I've ridden it 3 or 4 times in that time period. And so I was the ride director this year, which meant that I got to choose the routing, though I didn't change much from what it's been for the last few years. I choose the amenities that are at the rest stops and the food menu items. I choose all of the levels of support within the event, from our net control and the person who's on the other end of the line, that if you need help, you can call, to all of the people at the rest stops and volunteers and encore support, and down to every course marking, Dan Henry or sign, to that level of detail. So that's what I do, what I've done for the Harvest Century, and in directing that event and directing the rider experience.
Now with Harvest Century, is that an event ride that the profits go to the organization, or do people pledge money? Some of your rides, people pledge money.
The Harvest Century has optional pledging. It's not a mandatory fundraising ride, so the profits do benefit Community Vision, and on top of that, if you are pledging money and making additional donations, they are also actively doing that.
It seems to be, well, all the event rides, all the charity rides, I think, in our community have a lot of ridership, a lot of people that really support those rides. And so I kind of wanted to talk about, like you talked about earlier, that some of the cyclists that are doing this, they just want a good long ride. And so I guess we didn't really define an event ride. I guess in my mind, an event ride is a ride that, as a bicyclist, I pay money to do, but they're going to take care of me. They're going to feed me at different rest stops. There'll be portable toilets. Hopefully there'll be some kind of support that if I really got in a jam, somebody would help pull me off that course, a SAG vehicle or somebody from the rest stop, or somebody would help me some way, somehow. And presumably my monies go to an organization that I believe in, whether it's a charity for a disease to help find a cure, or just a club or something. So that's, to me, is an event ride. And so I pay, but I get something in return, and I get a great ride that somebody has carefully plotted out and provides me with a map, and like you say, puts markings somewhere so that I can find my way, and lots of other people to have a good time with. So a lot of times people complain that these charity rides are put on by the people from the charity, so they don't know bicyclists, and sometimes they don't know that we consume enormous amounts of calories when we're on these rides. And you get to a rest stop and they got a few grapes and some water, and it just, I did a ride that way last year, that they didn't have any energy drink of any kind, with any kind of electrolytes or anything. The water that they did have was carbonated. It wasn't just regular water. They didn't have any kind of protein or nutrition along the route. So somebody like you with a bicycling background can overcome that typical oversight for those rides.
Definitely. I mean, expertise in any field is valuable, and a lot of organizations, regardless of size, they have a lot of resources for expertise, and a lot of nonprofits certainly are, working with a wide variety of generosity of their most ardent supporters, and even cyclists who are doing volunteering a lot of their time to help make sure those events go really well. And to say that I've never had a rest stop run out of food by accident, we've all been there, and so it happens. It happens because you think, oh, people aren't, because for 5 years people didn't eat anything at this rest stop, and then this year they decided they were hungry there.
Yeah.
And so for a lot of organizations, yeah, my expertise can really help bring together a lot of the elements of an event, especially ones that may be very cycling specific. I happen to have that expertise, and I happen to be a cyclist. But I also think that the partners and the relationships and everyone who's bringing something into each one of those events and those experiences for the riders and for the participants is equally important, so that each one of those events has some unique qualities to them, as well as for the people who are truly passionate about that one cause, they are able to really feel, know that they're working hard and the organization is working hard on their behalf.
We're running out of time a little bit. I did want to touch on, like you're saying, a lot of people do these charity rides like the MS or Reach the Beach because they know somebody, they want to support that cause, they want to raise some money, and it's great, but they're not truly cyclists. So what advice would you give to those people as far as training and preparation to get ready for a big ride like that?
Yeah, if you're really passionate and you're going to bite off, I'm going to ride 50 miles. I've never been on a bike for more than 10, or you're going to set a stretch goal for yourself. Definitely preparation in two ways. One, just put some miles on, get in your saddle. Even if you're not doing just 10 or 15 miles training rides or more or less, frequency and being comfortable in your saddle is important. The other thing I tell a lot of new riders or questions that riders have about how do I ride or how do I do things, ride in your comfort level. Don't be intimidated by the group, or feeling like you have to stay going fast if people are going downhill, or that if you're ride in your comfort level.
Ride your own ride.
Ride your own ride. These are all of these rides we're talking about, all these events, they're rides and they're not races.
Yeah.
And most importantly, I'm working really hard to keep you safe and well fed and well supported during an event, and on your end, I'm looking for you to ride in your comfort level, to keep yourself safe and comfortable and having a good time, so that you can have the best day possible. And there's a whole slew of other little things, but if you're new to a ride and you're not really sure what to expect or what to do, give the organizer a call, ask them questions, ask them about, hey, I don't really ride a lot of these rides, what sort of offerings do you have at this ride? Ask about, they might not be able to tell you exactly what it's going to be like, how steep a hill is or how hard it is, but go out and find a hill that's about a mile long and ride up it, and then make a determination. Ask about what food is available, ask about what sort of services of support and how that works and everything, and the organizers are going to know the answer to those questions and be able to provide really specifics to that event, because every event is a little different.
That's really good advice, yeah, to just investigate as much as you can. And like a big event like Cycle Oregon has a training manual, so to speak, and maybe you could implement some of that to some of these as far as training, although Cycle Oregon is a week long. Or STP too, Seattle to Portland Cascade Bike Club has a lot of training information of how to build up that momentum. But I think that's really good advice to just spend time in the saddle, whether it's a little commute, or a club ride or something like that. Excellent advice.
I mean, even a spin class can be
invaluable
fantastic if the weather is inclement, in just spending time in the saddle.
You're right. Well, thank you so much, Brad. And again, this is Brad Nelson from Axiom Event Production, and he's a partner with Neil Armstrong. And a lot of the rides that you're probably looking to do in 2015 have his fingerprints all over it. And so we really appreciate your efforts and look forward to experiencing some of these event rides and the rest stops and all the great routes that you come up with. So thank you.
Thank you, Ann.
Okay, so we're going to go to a video now, and we'll come back with our second guest, Bryan Hance. And so please watch the safety video, and we'll be back with more information about bicycling.
Ride single file in the same direction as traffic. Obey traffic signs and signals. Signal your turns and look behind you before you turn. And always stay alert. So just think of your helmet as part of your gear. You don't see a soccer player without shin guards.
You don't see a basketball player without shoes.
You don't ride your bike without your helmet. It's part of the gear.
Ride safe, ride smart. It's time to start today.
All right, that was a great little safety video, and we like to share those on our show each month to just kind of refresh your memory about how to be safe on your bicycle and make sure those helmets fit, and just little basics like that we all tend to kind of forget about. So our second guest is here now, Bryan Hance, and he's got a lot of background in cycling, but he's specifically here to talk to us about bike thefts and his little software thing, bikeindex.org, and he'll fill us in on what that's all about in a few minutes. So welcome, Bryan, to Psychology Today.
Thanks very much for having me.
I'm glad you were able to make it. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, my name is Bryan Hance. I came to Portland in 2008. I grew up in Ohio, and I spent many years at school in Arizona, in Tucson, Arizona, another great cycling town. Moved back to Ohio for a while. I had come through Portland on a road trip and had just the best time. I really stuck in my memory. And I always knew someday I would end up back here. And it just took me a number of years. And in 2008, I was lucky enough to come back out. And this is my home now. And I lived here. I work here full time. And this is where I am now half of the Bike Index. So. Well,
good. And we'll hear about that. So what's your cycling history, and how does a bicycle fit into your life right now?
I was always I was a cyclist for a long, long time out of pure economic necessity. I was a broke college student for a very long time. And again, in Tucson, Arizona, which is a fantastic town for biking. So it's very supportive of a cycling community and cyclists, and of course, you know, great weather, and I couldn't not bike. And that was where I really sort of caught the bug. I had biked sort of recreationally as a kid, and then sort of realized, you know, the utilitarianism of it, and really turned it into a part of my lifestyle. I moved away and moved back to Ohio for a while, and I really missed it. It really it was the first time I had a sort of real visceral, you know, part that was missing. So moving back to Portland, that was one of the things that sort of reignited when I came here, to be in this sort of town that is not only so supportive, but just unbelievably beautiful. You know, the fact that there are so many lanes here and there's such a community here, it just, it sounds odd to say, but it's one of the things that makes me happy about being here. That I can say it's one of those things that truly puts a smile on my face. So I am a commuter at this point. I do cycle for exercise, but not nearly as much as I should. It's mostly just to get around. I'm car free, which is fantastic. Yeah, it's more of a day-to-day cyclist as opposed to a competitive or racer, that sort of thing.
Good for you. So you don't ride so much on the weekend like event rides that we just talked about?
I did the Harvest Ride this year, and it was fantastic. Yes, we were talking before the show. It's one of the few rides that I make a point of doing every year. The first year I moved here, I had a friend that told me I absolutely had to do this ride. I made it a point of doing a Harvest Ride every year. Only the 45 though. I'm not. That's my upper limit. So.
Okay, because I haven't done it.
You should do it.
I guess I got to do it.
You should do it. No pressure. You should do it.
So we're going to talk about your software that helps people find lost bikes. But tell us about your background that enabled you to be in this position.
I've always been a huge nerd. Totally not afraid to say it. I was in school for computer science when I actually began this whole sort of weird journey into researching bike theft and fighting bike theft. In the late 90s, I started a website called Stolen Bicycle Registry, which, as you can imagine, is a registry for stolen bicycles. And it was started out of frustration after having a number of bicycles and other things stolen. I didn't really live in the greatest part of town. I was a student. It was low budget, and it was a Trek 7300, and I had spent a decent amount of money on it, and it was like that great feeling to get back on a bike, and somebody jacked it, and something in my head just broke. And I started, talking to people, and I was looking at it from a sort of computer science perspective, and saying like, okay, it was right about the time that the web was becoming a big thing, and mobile technology wasn't quite there yet, but you could see it had potential. And I started this website with the idea that the people who are most likely to encounter stolen bikes and search and find stolen bikes are not the cops or warehouses, it's us, right?
Yeah.
It's people in the community, it's riders, it's bike shops, it's people in that world. So I started the website just sort of on a lark, just to see if it would work. And I'm just some kid with a small email list and a website, and I got 2 bikes back in the first week.
Wow,
and
that's
and
huge.
and this is small. This is a purely word of mouth thing. This was not really on Google a lot at the time, and it worked. And it just sort of ramped up slowly and continued to do so from there. And it was just very gratifying. So I am a systems guy and a database guy and a web guy, and that is sort of my background. But this is one of the areas where I find I could actually sort of apply that knowledge and get real work done and see a real tangible result.
Yeah, you did immediately.
I
Instant
did.
gratification
I did.
almost.
Yeah, it's
That's
really
amazing.
the feeling when you get somebody's bike back is
Yeah.
amazing, and we've gotten some really stellar recoveries. It's always amazing to hear the stories and how far they go and where they come from. So the system works. It works really well.
Let's talk about bike thefts in general before we get to the recovery and whatnot. Are there any considerations about theft when one's buying a bike? And I guess I'm asking that question because a lot of times there's lists of cars that are
it's funny because there's a metaphor. The most commonly stolen car is a Honda Civic, and why is that? It's because it's the most prevalent. I mean, there's just so many of them. The metaphor does sort of apply with bikes. There is no, thieves will take anything.
Yes.
They don't care. They don't care what it is. I wish I could give you numbers and say that there was. But the honest truth is whatever's available, whatever they can get, doesn't matter. Price doesn't matter. Location, it just matters. Can they get it? They'll take it.
So when we're shopping for a bike, we should just go
concentrate on the lock.
What's going to meet our needs and not worry about that it's most likely going to get stolen.
There is an argument that you hear a lot. People will often have their bicycle stolen, and they're sort of mourning the loss of that bike. And someone says, "Well, I have a very cheap bike. Why don't you do that?" And it's sort of this ridiculous argument. Well, don't have good things. And I've never, and it's weird to see that's sort of a knee-jerk response that people have. Again, it's don't concentrate on the bike. Concentrate on the security measures.
Yeah. Okay. And speaking of security measures, effective locks. What should we be looking for?
Skip cable locks. It's embarrassing that we even have this conversation this day and age. A stunning, painful majority of the bikes that are registered with me, that if it is a situation where there was a lock and a lock was compromised, it is a cable lock. You can get through one of those, with some spit and some muscle power and a rusty butter knife. It's not that difficult. U-locks are a great deterrent, of course. They're obviously the strongest thing that you can obviously get out there. But there's ways to defeat those, and it's
nothing's invincible.
What has been painful to watch is the number and ways in which those are starting to get defeated, and the ingenious ways that people are coming up with defeating those. They were always sort of the go-to solution. Well, you had it stolen, get a bike, get a U-lock, get 2 U-locks. That's sort of unfortunately no longer the case. And without naming the specifics, it's been sort of sad to see the level of compromise step up to the level and the quality of the locks. So get several of the U-locks is what I tell people. So
what's your personal situation if you commute to work? How do you protect your bicycle?
It sounds a little absurd, but I have 3 U-locks. And it's funny that a lot of people want to concentrate on the lock. There's a stunning amount that are stolen in non-locked situations. And that's something we see a lot here in Portland, where it's either at a business or it's in a garage or it's at home. We see a lot of smash and grabs with cars, where a lock never even comes into the picture. So it's not even a matter of how good was your lock. It's like, there's a pane of glass. Your security is only as good as the weakest link, and unfortunately in your garage it was a pane of glass. So you could have had 10 locks, it wouldn't matter. And we see a lot where the bike is locked and still carried off. There are a number of people that have taken to defeating whatever the bike is locked to. I mean, we've seen guys with saws cut trees in half. Or we've seen guys that'll actually, unfortunately, the steel that you've locked your bike to in certain racks is thinner and easier to get through than the lock. So they'll just take out the steel and they'll run off and they'll deal with the lock later. So it is, a lot of people do want to concentrate on, do I have this particular lock? Is it graded for this, is it a type A lock? Is it rated for 10,000 pounds? And that's not necessarily where they're getting taken from all the time.
Yeah.
We see a lot of, again, home and business break-ins where people have put it in a room that they were told was secure, and obviously it's not.
Yeah. And I know I had a couple of friends last year left their garage door open accidentally.
Yeah.
And that's...
Yeah, and I'm sorry for them because I've heard that story quite a bit. Garages in Portland in particular, everywhere, I shouldn't just say Portland, they're easy targets because there's a weird false sense of security that, my stuff is in there and it's locked and it's mine, but you take a good hard look at how hard it is to get into your garage. It's painfully easy to get into your garage.
Yeah.
And we see, I talked to a cop once who said, it's the perfect, sort of a perfect opportunity because, you can roll into the backpack, take everything in the garage, and then you've got an instant getaway vehicle right there. It's your bike. So they'll come in, they'll take your tools, they'll rifle through your car, they'll grab a bunch of other things, and then, hey, I have this bike here that I can ride off on. So it's really, garages are a big part of the problem.
Okay, good to know. So you talked about, theft a lot of times is just opportunity, but some thieves are looking for an expensive bike because maybe they want to sell it. Others it's opportunity, and two, I think we're having some valuable components just being taken right off the bike.
Yeah, and that's another one of the. It's such a weird. There's so many weird variables that come into play. The bikes are. It's very easy to part out. There's such an enormous aftermarket for parts, and there's all these great anonymous places where you can sell them. Without naming names, there's all these places online where I spend a disproportionate amount of my time chasing known or suspected thieves on these online marketplaces, where people have either have already purchased something stolen from them, so that we flag them, and it's the worst feeling that someone will say, I just bought this bike online, I got a smoking deal, brought it home, checked the serial, and it's stolen. And then you look at that seller's listings, and they've sold 700 bikes, and you just smack your head and you think, what do we do now? And especially if you start cross-listing them and recognizing them. So there is a thriving aftermarket, and there's very little, other than the frame, nothing is really marked or identifiable.
Yeah.
So it's pretty easy to take a bike and break it down into component pieces and move those component pieces, and it is a problem.
So I wanted to, when we were kind of researching this, so Jonathan Moss, who does bikeportland.org, kind of infamous around the Portland area, and you work with him.
Yeah, we do.
He had his bike stolen, and his story wasn't just briefly that he had ghost-ridden one bike down to work.
Yeah. He spaced. He was distracted. He said his head was somewhere else, and he just walked away.
And he locked his one bike, but he forgot to lock the other, and of course it was stolen.
And of course it was stolen. And it's a great bike. It's a gorgeous bike. I've seen that bike, and I remember seeing it when that came up on Twitter, and my brain went, I recognized it.
And so that is what he did. Is like he spread the word far and wide on Facebook, Twitter, and on, of course, his blog.
And he
and in the bike index. And because, like you're saying, that's where all the bikers are looking, and they'll help look for his bike.
And that really is one of the first things that you should do, other than register with the cops, of course, make a police report and get it sort of quote unquote in the system.
Yeah.
I mean, the first thing we tell people is tell everybody you know. When you register with a bike index, we get it out over Twitter. We also get it out over Facebook. We have localized Twitter feeds for certain cities that have very large followings. But it's also just eyeballs.
Yeah.
The more eyeballs you can have out there looking for your bike, the greater your chances go up. And I hate, it's going to be that community that finds and locates the bike. It's unless the really crazy circumstance comes up. The vast majority that we get back are, somebody's riding down the street and they said, man, I just saw your bike, some of the dudes on your bike.
Yeah.
If you can give them a heads up ahead of time, it's a great way to get it back. And that's exactly what Jonathan did.
Yes,
and lucky for him, he has a massive following.
And not to disparage the police at all, but you're right, it's bicycle, because where Jonathan found his, and like he said, he rode around, and then he started thinking,
he also knew the spots.
Yeah.
He's been in this town long enough, and we've if you've sort of done this obscure thing,
Yes.
chasing bike thieves for a certain amount of time, you sort of know where to
You
look.
know,
And he definitely knew where to look.
he went down the East Bank Esplanade,
He
and
did.
where it's kind of on the water there, it was under the
I
freeway.
believe it was Chop Shop number 47 on the East Bank Esplanade, which is, you know, sad to say, but it's true. And he did. He found it. He was actually lucky to find it unattended.
Yes.
We get into situations where it is obviously not unattended, and then it becomes a serious problem.
And he literally rode away with it. I mean, he ghost rode it.
He stole it back. Yeah,
He stole it back,
He basically
yeah.
stole it back, and he was
Yes.
lucky. I mean, that was the exception to the rule.
It was.
He obviously had the advantage of sort of knowing where to look, and only a certain amount of time had passed, and it sort of raises his chances a little bit. But he also had a stunningly unique ride.
Yes.
If that bike, you know,
You're right. It stood out even across the
I'm
water.
pretty sure
there.
if that bike would have gone anywhere, people would have seen it in about 15 minutes.
That's
but
true.
I was at work at the time, and I couldn't leave, and I couldn't go help him chase it down. But I was following the whole drama on Twitter, and it was the peaks and valleys of it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But it was great. I mean, the minute he put it out, a number of people chimed in and said, you know, I've checked here, I've checked here.
Yeah.
And again, it was those people who sort of knew where to look, and they sort of knew where the problem areas were, and they said, hey, you know, I'm over on this end of town, don't see it, but I'll keep an eye out for it. But yeah, that was definitely one of our most recent high-profile
That was very high profile.
thefts. Yes.
So tell us, let's talk about Bike Index then. So what do we do to protect our bikes?
Yeah, and this is just a little background. So as I mentioned before, my site was the Stolen Bicycle Registry. I never handled non-stolen. And there's a gentleman out of Chicago named Seth Herr who ran a wildly successful Kickstarter for the Bike Index, which is sort of the same thing, but he was supporting pre-registration. One of the biggest problems we have is that, you know, nobody writes their serial number down, and it's kind of a pain to do so. You have to flip the bike upside down. It's dirty. It's not really something that most people tend to do.
No.
He built a fantastic system for pre-registration, and pre-registration was something that I'd never touched. I was always more interested in the sort of back end of the equation. So we met. He came out on his Kickstarter victory lap and spent a number of days in Portland and talked to a lot of shops and met a bunch of people, and we sat down and we just meshed, you know, and we said, man, this would be great. Let's take my service, fold it into yours, and we can handle both upfront and after the fact. And it's worked out fantastic. It's free. One of the things we hear a lot, you know, a lot of people don't. There are registries that are run by, you know, police departments or cities or campuses or various entities, and they're good, but they can be a little bureaucratic. They can maybe not the most easily approachable, maybe not the most easily updated. I mean, one of the Bike Index taglines is we wrote the registry that we want to use. You know, it works on my phone. It's free. It's fast. I can pull out my phone right now and register a bike in, you know, 35, 45 seconds. That's the kind of thing. That's the sort of level of approachability that most people wanted. Not, you know, I'm going to fill out a piece of paper and mail it in to somewhere. It's a lot easier to do with today's technology.
Yeah, I think most of us appreciate that.
Yeah, speed, it's definitely a speed thing. So the Bike Index will let you register your bikes either ahead of time or at the point of sale, or, you know, if you have had it stolen, you can register it. You can register the bike at any time in its life cycle.
So any of my bikes, I can go online now and register my bikes. And then how do I use that if one of my bikes is stolen?
So yeah, when you register, you're basically proving provenance. You know, we ask you some questions and we ask you to take a picture. One of the things we ask people to do, if there are any distinctive like dings or nicks or dents or something besides the serial number that would identify your bike, you're taking pictures of this and you're uploading that, and you're proving, you know, I have this thing at this point in time. We also ask you, of course, for documentation. If unfortunately that bike ever takes a walk or is taken, we've got all that information on file, and you can just hit the big red button and say it's stolen. Once that happens, we are what they call open source. We give our data to anybody who wants it. You know, one of the biggest things that I was trying to combat when I started Stolen Bike Registry was again, the people who are most likely to come in contact with the stolen bikes have no access to the data.
Yeah.
Police are sitting on these great databases, and so are campuses, but they're black holes. I simply can't talk to them. And some of the larger, more well-known registries, I mean, there's literally no way for me to query that data. The Bike Index is open to anybody who wants to use it, and we have a number of people ranging from bike shops to pawn shops to other partners to campuses to cops to, I mean, we wrote a Twitter bot that you can tweet a serial number to our Twitter bot, and it'll tell you whether or not that bike has been reported stolen. we take great pains to make this information as free and as fast and as quickly available to anybody who wants it. So we have what they call as an open API, which means anyone can talk to us and say, hey, I have a bike with these following characteristics and this serial number. Is it stolen? Yes or no? And we can provide a fast, free response. So if that does happen, you hit the big red button and report your bike stolen. It is flagged on the web, but it goes out in all these other places where all these other eyeballs and all these other people are looking for it. And one of the things that is really sort of proving to me that this system works is we track pretty closely the number of queries that are coming in. How many people are looking for stolen bikes out there, and the growth curve is great. It's doing this, and that warms my heart because it means there's a huge community out there, people that are looking.
Yeah, that is good. So you kind of touched on once our bike is gone, certainly if we're registered with Bike Index, then we can push the big red button. And so you mentioned calling the police. So kind of walk us through. My bike's stolen. What should I do?
Definitely always file a police report. And Portland is lucky; they have online reporting. There are certain crimes where you can just fill it out online. What we found is that there are some deficiencies with that system. That information takes a while to trickle out to the people who can use it. So you should always report it online simply so you have a number and a reference so that if it does pop up somewhere else and you need someone to help you go get it, you've got a number.
Yeah.
So that's sort of the standard song and dance that you do when something is taken. Again, of course, get it registered in the Bike Index. We'll get it out to as many people as we possibly can. We'll auto post it to Facebook. We'll give you tools to get it to Facebook and Twitter and whatnot. We always point people, there's a couple tools online that will let you scan these online auction sites for certain characteristics. So we have some instructions for people that'll walk them through setting up alerts. So if your red Trek pops up, or if anyone lists a red Trek in a particular geographic region, you get an alert. And that's also a pretty popular way to, and do what Jonathan did, get some friends and go ride around, go look for it.
ASAP.
ASAP.
Yeah.
And that's more successful than you would think.
Yeah. Because they're not going to, on the bike, typically, they're not going to get that far.
Yeah, and
days
a lot
pass,
of them,
maybe they're up in Seattle, but right away.
Yeah, we do. We do have some crazy stories of distance and where people find them, and they're stolen in Northwest, and we find them in Gresham, and they we'll constantly find bikes in Oregon down in California, from Oregon down in California, and vice versa. The current record is a 10-year recovery that went from Washington to North Carolina. And that's the exception to the rule, but they go extremely far. We actually tracked one that popped up in Japan. This guy had a very particular, there was only one of this bike. And he had made some very specific modifications, and it was one of a kind, purely one of a kind, and he found it on an auction site in Japan, which means someone stole his bike in San Francisco and shipped the thing to Japan, and he found it. And just the novelty that it was also, a hideously expensive bicycle, so there was an incentive there.
Sure.
Yeah.
Interesting. So we talked about, you talked about proving that the bike is yours. That's essential. So if you're thinking about this before it happens, then you're kind of running around gathering your documentation and taking pictures. What if you didn't do that?
It's best to do that ahead of time, of course. We have had a number of recoveries where, even without a serial, where someone has identified, again, a very specific scratch or a very specific characteristic, or a series of modifications where, if it does get seized and some police are looking at it and they say, look, there's no way this isn't yours. You've got these pictures, you've got these scratches, you've got these things. And we'll release it to you.
Okay.
That one just happened in Seattle where it was an undocumented Raleigh that the girl who lost it, or had it stolen, was able to identify like 3 very unique things about this, including one of the scratches. And the guy's like, it's yours, come and get it. We'll do the paperwork and get it back to you.
And I wanted to mention, too, that on Psychology Today, back in July of 2014, we did air a show with a guest talking about insurance. So if you don't recover your bike, you might want to watch that segment talking about insurance and how you might get some help that way, too.
Insurance is always good. Money is one thing, but what we find with bikes is it's almost never about the money.
It's true.
People have such a personal relationship with their rides, and there's value there beyond, there's emotional value there beyond any sort of dollar amount. I routinely get these stories that, you know, someone broke into my garage, they took my bike, but it was my mom's bike. And it was the bike she rode me around on when I was a kid. And it's the bike that I was riding my kid around on, you know, and I was going to give it to her. It's money is such a small variable.
That's very true.
When it comes down to it.
That's usually the case. So just briefly, what technology is available? You touched on your bike index. And talk just briefly, we've got about 90 seconds left.
There are companies that make GPS trackers.
Okay.
Some of them are amazing. Their camouflage is fantastic. They are expensive, sort of prohibitively expensive. There's a technology coming around called low power Bluetooth, LTBT, I believe, that has some promise because it ties into your phone. Anybody with one of those phones can sense it. There are a lot of little gadgets and doohickeys out there, but I mean, what we found is the single most important thing is that number that's hammered into the frame. You can put all the doodads on that you want, but they're going to get stripped off in the first 5 minutes.
Yeah, I was thinking that the GPS, would be something that if a thief knows to look, would probably find it.
It's going right in the river.
Yeah.
You've got maybe a 6-minute window before they find that and take it off. There are some that are hidden very well. But anybody who knows what they're doing, anybody who's been a thief for more than 10 minutes is going to know what to look for. So we have always focused on the serial. The same thing with stickers. I would love to say that stickers work, but they can be defeated. You know, I can put a Chiquita banana sticker on top, but we always focus on the serial number.
Yeah.
Because that is going to be your
bottom line.
Yeah,
it keeps coming around to that.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, thanks so much, Bryan, for joining us and really, I don't know, opening up my eyes anyway to some of this stuff.
No worries. Please check out the Bike Index.
I definitely will. I'll be taking pictures of my bike here.
Yes.
So thank you, and thank you to Brad Nelson for joining us earlier in the show. And I hope that you've come away with some information that'll be helpful to you in your bicycling endeavors. And I wanted to mention that we're finishing up our year, as I said, Northwest Bicycle Safety Council, and looking to 2015, some more bike fairs and helmet fittings, and trying to keep the kids in our community safe with their helmets covered in helmets. So we're working on that and looking forward to the 2015 Beaverton Banks and Beyond as a ride that you can put on your bucket list for next year to ride with us. Bruce and I lead rides with Portland Wheelman Touring Club, pwtc.com. And that's a way for you to get ready for some of these event rides, whether it's Reach the Beach or Beaverton Banks and Beyond. Ride with a club, get some distance, learn how to ride in groups, increase your skill level, find new routes, and just have a real enjoyable time on your bicycle. And again, Bruce and I lead some pretty beginner type rides to help you get going and learn things and learn about what gear you might need and need to buy. And so please come and join us and ride with us. Thanks for joining us.